We've all heard the phrase, stick with what got you to the dance. With the vast array of skill sets and backgrounds in mixed martial arts, this mentality is especially prevalent. In the heat of the battle, it's only natural that a fighter revert back to their strengths as fatigue and damage accumulate. But of course, that doesn't always happen. For every wrestler who takes the simple path to victory, there's another who falls in love with their hands and wants to show them off. For every kickboxer who prefers to use distance striking, there's another who wants to display the improvements that they've made in their grappling arsenal. Needless to say, this doesn't always go as planned. The mixed part of mixed martial arts has left quite a few specific style experts with L's that may have been avoided if they just simply stuck to their bread and butter. Hey, what's up guys? Jason here. I just want to give a huge shout out to our sponsor for this video, and that is Caveman Coffee. If you want super low calorie, keto friendly energy, this is by far the cleanest way that you can find it out there. I can't recommend it enough. You can save 25% off just by simply using the code MMAOnPoint on their website, cavemancoffeeco.com. Links are in the description, and we got some special news on that later, so stick around. Anyhow, these are 10 times fighters pay dearly for trying to switch styles. Number 10, Fabricio Werdum rushes a boxer. Sure, Fabricio Werdum made his name as one of the best submission artists in heavyweight history, but the work he put in to improve his kickboxing game was, in fact, paying off. After KOing K1 vet Mark Hunt and outclassing Roy Nelson and Travis Brown on the feet, Werdum felt extremely confident on the feet for his first title defense against Stipe Miocic at UFC 198. Probably safe to say that fighting in front of his countrymen in Brazil, where he'd been undefeated, helped boost that striking confidence just a bit beyond its actual levels. And sure enough, that signature Werdum face was front and center in what was supposed to be a triumphant homecoming on a card that featured Brazilians largely running through all the foreign opponents. But a composed Miocic was completely unfazed by the aggressive tactics of Werdum and the over 45,000 fans cheering for the champion. Relying primarily on his boxing, Stipe countered Vai Cavallo's blitzing offense and leg kicks. In a reckless charge forward, Werdum left his head completely unguarded as he threw looping shots, with Miocic calmly stepping out of range. Stipe caught Werdum clean and put the Brazilian out, and taking the belt back to the United States. Number 9, Kron Gracie, the kickboxer? If you know even the smallest sliver of information about mixed martial arts, the name Gracie holds a ton of weight. Even the most casual observers know not to hit the ground with anyone with that legendary surname. That includes Hickson's youngest son, Kron. After a stellar career in grappling, including a gold medal at ADCC and multiple first-place finishes in international BJJ competition, his transition into MMA was much hyped. After a sporadic 2-year stint in Ryzen, Kron made his way over to the UFC with the promotion ready to capitalize off of the name value with a main card debut against Alex Caceres. After quickly finding a submission finish there, he was booked in a co-main event against grizzled vet Cub Swanson. With a sophisticated and diverse striking game that's resulted in 11 knockout wins and several wars spanning over his long career, it seems like a Gracie would be better off getting Cub Swanson to the floor. Couple this with the fact that despite Cub being a BJJ black belt, he's been submitted in 7 of his 11 losses. It seemed like a no-brainer to take the fight there. Instead, he found himself on the feet for the overwhelming majority of the 15-minute contest. He did attempt to pull guard a couple of times, but it was just not enough. To his credit, Kron's heart was on full display, even earning fight of the night, but his lack of adequate boxing relative to his peer in this fight, an old-school Gracie stomp kick, made him a complete fish out of water in this fight. Number 8, Josh Barnett abandons his ground game. By now, we well know about the dangers of leg kicking a grappler. If they can grab that limb, it usually means you'll be on your back and at their mercy very soon. Pedro Rizzo was known for some absolutely brutal leg kicks, and fresh off of literally leg kicking Dan Severn into submission at UFC 27, that tactic was fresh in the minds of every single heavyweight on the roster that anticipated looking across from Pedro the Rock Rizzo in the octagon. So Josh Barnett decided to put his catch wrestling and tap out skills aside to embrace a stand-up battle with the Brazilian. The undefeated baby-faced assassin quickly learned that his leg kicks did not quite compare to those of Rizzo, and there was a clear audible difference when each man landed.
That's gotta hurt.
By the start of the second round, Barnett was badly bruised on his lead leg. Surprisingly, he stuck with that exact same game plan, refusing to attempt takedowns after answering the call for the second round. Hizzo would again take advantage of this skill deficit, getting the better of most of the exchanges and walk through Barnett's strikes. Amazingly, Barnett's aggression never waned, but it did come back to instantly haunt him as Hizzo landed 2 hard counterpunches, ending in a devastating highlight reel KO and adding the first defeat of his career to his record. Number 7. Gilbert Burns strikes just a little ahead of his time. Sure, Burns is next in line for a shot at the UFC welterweight title and was recently seen overwhelming and outstriking former champion Tyron Woodley, but he wasn't always regarded as such a high-level fighter on the feet. It was at that time that he took on Dan Hooker at lightweight on the prelims for UFC 226. With a nice collection of submission grappling gold medals and 2 bonus-worthy submissions in the UFC, it seemed just like common sense that Burns would want to take this one to the floor. While Burns was fresh off of 2 impressive knockout wins, Hooker on the other hand boasted several more striking finishes over his UFC tenure and was a product of New Zealand's famed city kickboxing, where he formerly competed in, wait for it, kickboxing.
I would not have guessed that.
The difference in acumen was apparent very quickly. Burns would absorb counter right hands and leg kicks before a lead hook forced referee Mark Smith to intervene just before the first half of the first round was over. But to be fair though, Durinho actually did manage to land a hard right that appeared to briefly stun Hooker, and shortly after competed a single leg takedown as well, but it was just too little ground offense for who he was up against. Who knows how that fight would go today if they are in the same weight class again, with Burns far more developed striking today. Number 6. Alistair Overeem's overconfident takedowns. As one of the most well-accomplished jiu-jitsu players to ever step foot into mixed martial arts, it would seem rather unwise to initiate a ground fight with FABRICIO WERDUM. Dutch kickboxer Alistair Overeem did not seem to think that highly of WERDUM's submission abilities when these two met for the first time all the way back in 2006 for the Pride Heavyweight Grand Prix. While Overeem, mind you, wasn't strictly a good kickboxer, after all, he did actually have 12 tap-out victories on his resume heading into the bout, it was clear that his best course of action was to keep Cro Cop's world champion BJJ coach off of the floor with long strikes. Instead, Overeem would spend a good portion of the opening round clinching WERDUM, even scored several takedowns and spent a decent amount of time laying in WERDUM's very, very dangerous guard. Confident he could survive the no man's land, Overeem went back to that well in the second round again. However, this time, he'd pay for that mistake as towards the end of the frame, WERDUM would isolate an arm and force the tap with a Cormier from guard. The next time the two faced one another, it was clear that Overeem had sharply learned his lesson from the first fight. In a slow-paced and forgettable affair, the Demolition Man avoided WERDUM's game like the plague in a 15-minute snooze fest. Number 5. Rich Franklin versus Anderson Silva. For the uninitiated, the Spider's flawless performance against Chris Lieben at Fight Night 5 actually came as a surprise to many. Count Rich Franklin among that group. Even though Silva had proven himself as an elite striker and showcased some of his stellar Muay Thai in his TKO of Jorge Rivera just a year earlier, the odds makers weren't quite convinced and dubbed the champion the then favorite when he challenged for the middleweight crown. And Franklin thought his best path to victory was crowding Silva and shutting down some of those rangy strikes he used against Lieben by initiating the clinch. There he would presumably bully the challenger and dominate him to a successful title defense. But that's not exactly how things played out. Franklin's desire to stay in range led Silva to find that tie plumb about 2 minutes into the first round. From there, Silva would unload a parade of knees that battered the champion until he finally succumbed to them. Although he was confident in his clinch game in the build-up, Franklin wasn't known for such high-level Muay Thai, making this very specific strategy even more misguided in hindsight. Number 4. Anthony Johnson versus Daniel Cormier 2. One underappreciated fact about Rumble Johnson is his wrestling. While you won't find too many people who think of him as a wrestler, his 77% career takedown defense speaks for itself. Not to mention controlling Dan Hardy on the ground, neutralizing Phil Davis. But against someone with the stellar resume of Daniel Cormier, an Olympian, stepping into that arena is a, bad idea. Rumble decided to test fate in his rematch with the then light heavyweight champion at UFC 210, and for some reason see if his wrestling could match with the aforementioned Olympian. And while he did score a takedown on DC in the first fight, that fleeting moment of success at UFC 187 did him no favors this time around. Early into the opening round, Rumble attempted a double leg takedown after eating a hard overhand. While initially it did look like a quick attempt to buy time to regain his wits after the punch, he actually kept fighting there and submission, then switched to a clinch against the fence. And even after ending the round with a solid head kick that broke the champion's nose, Rumble found himself leaning on his wrestling again in the second round. Only this time, DC turned the tables by showcasing his signature skill, leading to a second round rear naked choke over Johnson. After giving DC scares with his power in both fights, Rumble left everyone puzzled about why he opted to poke the bear instead. Perhaps it was a safe way to retire healthy at the time? Please come back already. Oh, yeah, and about DC. Number 3, Daniel Cormier falls in love with the knockout. We can go on forever and ever about how impressive Daniel Cormier's wrestling is, with amateur accolades that include 2 stints in the Olympics and far too many other awards to name. That skill set translated extremely well into mixed martial arts, as his high pace and ability to impose his will led him to being one of the sport's all-time greats. After quickly finishing Stipe to take the heavyweight belt with precise clinch strikes, many didn't know exactly what to expect when they rematched UFC 241. Of course, Stipe would make those adjustments, which deserves all the credit in the world here, but any focus on protecting himself from the punches wouldn't help if DC decided to rely on his bread and butter. And as things got underway at the Honda Center in Anaheim, it looked like that was exactly what was going to happen, as his patented high crotch single put Miocic on his back. He'd remain there for the duration of the round, and it looked like the story was already written. But to the confusion of everyone watching, DC abandoned that wrestling and elected to stand and trade punches. This gave Stipe the leeway to regain control and finish DC with punches in the 4th round. Heading into their rubber match at UFC 252, Cormier even acknowledged that his easiest path to victory would be to continue where he left off in the first round of the rematch. Yet again, he'd score a takedown, but he'd also abandon it and pave the way for Miocic to further claim his spot as possibly the best heavyweight ever, and of course, the victory. Number 2, Conor McGregor goes for mount. Beyond the endless tale of street beef, flying dollies, and cringeworthy cultural insults, the long-awaited match of Conor McGregor and Khabib Nurmagomedov was the classic pairing of striker versus grappler. McGregor, who had shown a variety of effective kicks and consistent ability to end things with his power punches, would test those skills against the relentless and smothering wrestling attack of an undefeated Khabib. Tension was at all-time level highs in the T-Mobile Arena as the opening bell rang. McGregor quickly showed his game plan, pressure his rival with forward-moving striking to draw out the takedown attempts that normally would come with Khabib's pressure. When McGregor all but escaped the first shot in the first 20 seconds of the fight, it looked like for just a glimpse in time, the Notorious might actually be able to accomplish what no one else could against Nurmagomedov. But instead of disengaging and resetting on the feet to rinse and repeat, McGregor did the unthinkable. Bringing back memories of Conor's ill-fated wrestling attempts against Nate Diaz in their first fight, he bafflingly attempted to gain a superior position in what appeared to be a near full mount.
It's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off for him.
But the Eagle had more than enough wits to continue chaining together slight adjustments to reverse this ill-fated strategy and complete the takedown. The remaining time in that first round saw Khabib wrestle McGregor against the fence while neutralizing every attempt to escape. Conor helplessly looked up at the clock as he tried his best to survive the positional battle. While he escaped that round with relative little damage, he was already in sinking quicksand as fatigue and mounting apprehension played into Khabib's favor. And so, spawning from that singular moment, it looked like every other effort in Nurmagomedov's career as McGregor was smothered and then forced to tap eventually in the 4th round. Not saying this one stand-up would have changed that much, but we all know getting up from that initial takedown in McGregor's best round, the first round, would have at least given him a fighting chance. And number 1, Ronda Rousey versus Holly Holm. Imagine, if you can, Royce Gracie deciding that he could outbox Art Jimerson at UFC 1. And if that scenario sounds like a completely disastrous idea for the submission specialist, you should check out UFC 193. I mean, let's be real, you've probably all seen it. It was there that the pop cultural phenomenon Ronda Rousey would completely forget about her judo gi and matching bronze medal in an effort to show off the boxing skills that landed her on the cover of Ring magazine. Sure, it looked effective against someone like Betch Correia, but unfortunately for Ronda, she'd be trying to accomplish this task against Holly Holm, who parlayed a championship boxing and kickboxing career into a run at the UFC bantamweight title. In fact, the same magazine that prominently featured Rousey had declared Holm as the best female boxer in 2005 and 2006, but alas, her famed coach, Edmund Tarverdian, boasted that Rousey was dropping world champion boxers and even tempting Holly to say,
"I wish she does box with us, because Ronda can box."
Well now, in what became one of the most memorable moments in the sport's history, Rousey was completely outmatched on the feet. Holm created angles and landed punches seemingly at will as the champion barely clung to her consciousness. And by the time Ronda did attempt any grappling, the damage was already done and Holm had her way until the infamous head kick KO that shook the world. In addition to outclassing her on the feet, she even scored a takedown on Rousey herself. Come to think of it, if that bad idea turned out in Rousey's favor, we'd be talking about Holm in this entry instead. And guys, I want to give a huge shout out to our sponsor for today, and that is Caveman Coffee. If you aren't already familiar with them, they make incredible tasting coffee that is as clean energy gets. It's super low calorie and completely keto friendly, which means it has no sugar in it at all. And I'm currently drinking their pumpkin spice flavor, which is super dope. I can't get enough of this stuff. They also offer mocha and vanilla flavors as well as a nitro cold brew, and it has the equivalent of 3 shots of espresso. It definitely gets you going. On top of that, they also have the hibiscus tea flavor, which only has an astonishing 6 calories. I absolutely love this stuff. The company is run by former UFC talents Keith Jardine and Tate Fletcher, so it couldn't be a better fit for us. You can save 25% off by using the code MMAOnPoint at cavemancoffeeco.com, and for the month of October only, they're running a special campaign with these awesome gold coins that if you randomly happen to receive one, may be attached with big money discounts and even free coffee. So definitely order during the month of October so you can get in on this. I'd like to give a massive shout out to the writer of this list. You all know him well, Anthony Walker. You can follow him on Twitter at AntWalkerMMA. And of course, the video editor of this list, the MVP editor of MMA On Point, Max Randall. You can follow him on Twitter at Max_Randall. Finally, the person who gave us the music for the intro here, we got Ben Rosette. You can catch his music down in the links below in the specific song used in the intro. And then you can also follow him on Instagram or Twitter at Ben Rosette. Thanks for watching my list, guys. If you enjoyed the video, subscribe and like. We upload at least 3 videos per week about MMA, and it really helps us out when you do so. If I missed anything on this vid, let me know in the comments, and feel free to follow me on Twitter at JasonTheHeart or follow the official channel account at OnPointMMA. Thanks for watching so much, and I'll catch you on the next video.